Running has to make sure that our public
They
understands.
have to create security for like 2 gates,
He's gonna be making some
and
of
there's
those
no
decisions
service
that
that you can pass.
determines as well, and then of course using and
Who needs security?
then just
Good
the
to go?
obvious ones.
Okay.
Untitled residents.
Welcome everybody to our work meeting tonight. A couple of changes right out of, I need to look for a motion, we're gonna move 2.4 up to the beginning, so we can hear from Chris, the lobbyist, so he doesn't have to
So
stay
we
through
wanna
it.
start
And
kind
then
of those extra.
Sherry's gonna be late, and she really wants to be a part of 2.1, and probably 2.2. So let's move 2.4 up.
I'll start.
We can kind of talk about 2.3, and we'll kind of see where we're at. Is that okay? Is that okay? So I'm looking for, I need a motion.
You need a motion to
Yeah.
amend the agenda?
Motion to reorder the agenda.
Alright.
That's what I need.
Motion to reorder the agenda as the mayor outlined.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm just doing what I'm told on here. She puts it in red so I don't miss it. Okay. So before we get to that, though, let's do item 1.2, any future agenda items. Steve, any? Eddie?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, one item I was asked to bring up, and we can put on a future agenda, or we can even just look for feedback now. Our signs at the entrances to the city, those electronic signs, are outdated.
The whole
Right.
$80,000 we spent on it?
Um,
I know, I think it's per sign, but yeah.
So they need, the screens need updated. We're looking to cost about $120,000 just to replace, both of them. We can use Arpa money if we want, or we could try to put it in the budget for next year. ARPA, we'd have to, maybe one of those detention basins get bumped or something, but I possibly would wanna look at, I think with those bike parks we're talking about, maybe we can get those done for less.
It's just the screen we're replacing, right?
Just the screens and the,
Yeah, just the dual-sided screens, and then,
We haven't RFP'd that yet, have we, or no?
No.
Okay, but we're budgeting
I
20-ish,
mean, we have some bids, but
and we're talking high, like next level technology?
yes,
Okay.
cause they're outdated.
Yeah.
And so they're becoming expensive too.
The
Repair.
bulbs and whatever, yeah.
thoughts.
Want it on a future agenda, or do you wanna?
We're gonna make a decision. We can put it on future agenda, think about it.
So we can either use ARPA or we can just go ahead and try to go through the budget process and see if it works that way.
I would rather not undo
Yeah.
the projects that we talked about, the detention bases, getting as many of those knocked out. I think we just want those troubles gone. If there's any left, we could, use that. And then I think the rest, we just have to try and work it into the budget. I think that's what
I agree with that, cause I mean, the signs are nice, it's an amenity, not an infrastructure thing in the.
Yeah, and there's other things that have been waiting a long time.
Okay.
But it is a good resource for information and all that, so.
And it's indicative of gateway to our city and people to have good information there.
We can just put a coming soon sign on it.
In a couple of years. Put it in the next
No.
one.
I think we'll move swifter.
Future home.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Are we okay with that then?
Yep, that's all we needed to know.
Okay, perfect. Okay, 1.3, council discussion of future citizen recognition. Teddy, I know you had some names you wanted to discuss.
So this has become a beast, once I dove into it, right? You start looking, I've met with several of the high school principals and visited with the junior high principals and just going through community pages and news articles. There is a plethora of people we could recognize, and talking with them, and talking amongst other people, are we overthinking this? And the answer is yes, probably, right? Most definitely. So I'm not sure if we simplify it, and obviously the first time we'll have a lot of people, and then sports seasons or competition seasons we'll have other people. But I'm not sure if we need to set a parameter, and it's like excellence in the community, and we have some guidelines or parameters on that. And it may not be this month, but next month it happens. So, but I mean, I've got a list of 30 people from state championships to national championships, first place DECA competitions. We've got cheer programs that are taking nationals and conferences. We've got FCLAs that are winning. We've got all from all three high schools, and we got Olympians as well. So it's a lot of people. I mean, it's not just your football team or basketball team. So, I mean, we could talk for hours on it and go through every name, but I think it's something that we may have to put some parameters on.
What do we do?
What do you say? You have to win a championship? Well, we got 30 of those.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
The good thing is, I mean, our area does pretty well in sports and activities and deck and band. We have the largest marching band out of Harriman High School in the nation. And it's just because we have an amazing field out there, an amazing director. Some of our programs are top notch in the nation, but it's in the area in the state, we're kind of underdogs to Utah County. Utah County's killing us in division sports, right? So, in the state title stuff, but I think that if we come up with something and maybe we recognize one or two people per month, that might be something we do. And I don't know how we set those parameters. We recognize everybody as, as nominees or recognition, but we invite two or three of them out to meetings.
Can I ask a question? Would you also want those to be the people that are spotlighted in the We Are Harriman? Because we always pick one member of the community for each newsletter edition. And would you want that process to be a part of that as well, or do you want that to just be completely separate?
What's that process look like?
It's just when people from the community submit, so right
Okay.
now that's kind of all it is. And sometimes we're struggling to get people to submit, so we come up with high school teams that
Yeah.
take.
So we could mix it up, I mean, we could kind of highlight them, because we could have some of these mentioned in the newsletter and don't have to bring it here, and I think either way they're getting some recognition.
Yeah. So one key thing I was telling the principals, I'm like, I grew up in a small town, you grew up in a small town, there was one high school, you knew all the kids that won. It was the newsletter, the newspaper, everything was all about the high school. We have 3 high schools, right? 4 technically, yeah.
and we don't have a newspaper that,
Yeah,
daily newspaper that talks about that
yeah.
stuff.
The Harriman Journal catches quite a bit. I don't know what the transition of that looks like now, but it's exciting to see, and just even logging onto their Facebook page or their website page, you can't find that information. It's usually mom bragging about it or the student bragging about it, or the coach. So it took some digging. Even some of your posts you tagged on, send me that information and stuff. I mean, we got art winners that are going to the state capital, to DC, which is showing art shows and stuff, and so we have some talent out here, so, yeah, I think it could roll into the monthly newsletter.
And we can also spotlight more than one,
Yeah.
if you guys choose to do 3 that month, we can put 3 in and just add to it,
Yeah.
so we don't have to have it just be one.
The-
But we'll let you submit
So
those.
there's a challenge, right? First, then you have to have a criteria over who you would submit and who you would exclude. And if you say you're gonna submit at the rate that people are having achievements and accomplishments in this community, we may not actually get through the people that have already accomplished something before there's a new batch of people to recognize.
Yeah.
Does it become a negative that we miss somebody?
Yeah.
We do honorable mentions for all of them, or, I don't know,
You
it's
could
tough. Yeah.
Pick a standout and then just mention.
What have you seen down here?
Nothing formal like that,
Okay.
right? Cities will, if it's one town, they might recognize a state championship once in a while, but based on how many your list and all that, maybe the newsletter, or maybe we use our social media and our communications to push things. I mean, it is one way to draw a lot of likes to your things. If you're putting things out about kids, the parents start sharing it, you get your message out better. Feel good.
And this is 3 months worth, right? From January, February till now. I didn't go back in December, but, yeah.
I think in the past, what you've seen is individual counselors would recognize, hey, we had this happen, and so they've invited. No good deed goes unpunished,
Of course.
so whatever you do, somebody's gonna have their feelings hurt, so.
And these kids do get recognized in their school, in their graph, in their peer group, but citywide they don't usually. Also, the high schools have invited us out to their, they'll be sending us out invites for their recognition awards, like their Principal Pride Awards or their Principal Achievement Award stuff. So they do that, and then also any graduation ceremonies. Providence Hall, wanted us last year. I guess no city staff showed up or city showed up, so they want us there this year for graduation. So, yeah, so, yeah. You'll be there. So, they're excited about just having city involvement and people, I mean, we've got invited out to tour Athlos, we've got invited out to do some other things, so that'll be coming up in the agenda in meetings later, but.
You know, I tend to be self-deprecating in terms of the contribution that I might make as a member of this council. But I do recognize that there's a certain I don't know, honor that goes with the office, if that makes sense. And as a member of the council, or as a council as a whole, when we say things or do things or make recognitions or proclamations or announcements, it carries weight and it's meaningful to the people who get those acknowledgements. And so I think, for what it's worth, I think we should do our best to let's start knocking them out. And if it takes, a few minutes, and you do 4, 5, or 6 in a meeting, that's great. Knock them out, get them recognized, take the picture with the city council, shake the mayor's hand, and,
I don't even know if we need to do a certificate with it, even if we're just recognizing them.
Yeah.
Just saying, hey, they're here, congratulations on what you did.
Maybe have the captain of the team or somebody just give a real brief outline of their accomplishment, their season, or something like that. I just think trying to figure out who we do and who we don't do is a really tough process. I think just acknowledge them.
Yeah.
And just let them know, say, hey, we're gonna acknowledge you guys if you wanna come, we're glad to, and take pictures and do the.
And if we miss somebody, we get notified and put them on the next
We'll
one.
put them on the next one, yeah.
Because we're gonna miss
I think
somebody.
it's big, I think
Yeah,
it's
I do too.
critical for the community. They do it in Rivertown, I mean, you see the other cities doing it, they're posting that kind of stuff a lot, I think it goes a long ways.
Yep.
And then I think the ones that we acknowledge, we include those in the newsletter. We come up with a plan and say, here's the 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever we're gonna acknowledge, and we put them in the newsletter, and you highlight them, and you punch out some social media things that say, here's the great things happening in our city, and I think there's just a positive message all the way around.
Awesome.
Do you wanna pick a couple? I've got the 2 I had. Were the boys and girls wrestling over at Mountain Ridge?
Yeah, Mountain Ridge slayed it. Yeah,
So I
they did
wanted
good.
to bring those 2 teams out,
Okay.
that finished in the top, I think they posted like the top 5 finishers. Might bring them
Boys
in.
wrestling had 2 state championships, and the team finished 9th, I believe, overall, or something like that.
So I'll just reach out to those 2 coaches. Do you wanna pick a couple more and we'll add a couple more and then you can add a couple more in the next?
Yeah. So the really big one that stuck out was Addie Burning from the Gatorade Utah Cross Country Player of the Year. She's from Harriman.
Murray's daughter.
Yeah.
And then we got Ashley Larson. She was a state winner of the National Center for Women in Technology. So that's massive. So let's do those 2, and then we can also do let's do a Providence. They had the wrestling team. They had 2 first place wrestlers as well.
Wow.
In the 3A division.
Okay.
And then their dance team, they won championship as well, so.
Do you wanna do all of them or do you wanna?
No, we can do 2 and 2, I guess, so 6 total, I guess. Those, your 2 wrestling, and then the 2 from Harriman, and the 2 from Mountain Ridge, or Providence, sorry.
Okay, so boys and girls wrestling, Addie, Ashley,
Ashley, and
you
then
wanna do Providence wrestlers?
Providence wrestlers, Grant and Alyssa,
Okay.
I believe. And then just their dance team.
And their dance team
Yeah.
too? Okay,
That's great. I mean, and it doesn't have to take a long time, but
right, and that's, I think, yeah, absolutely.
it's sure a lot more fun to do that stuff than.
Right, absolutely.
That's why we're here, right?
Sorry.
Now back to roads.
Now that's-
Zoning definitions and
Yeah.
road widths and. Yeah.
Gary, anybody,
Not
no, you
next.
came in late, anybody you wanna recognize? soccer players.
Everybody's great.
We love everybody.
Everyone gets a trophy. Everyone gets.
You and my wife is it all. Okay, we'll move on to item 2.4 then, which will now be 2.1. So Chris, welcome, thank you for being here. We'll turn over to Chris.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Good to be here. I just mentioned that I loved your comment, if I could just add to it. Live in Lehigh, coached the girls' Sky Ridge tennis team this last year, they won state. And Lehigh had sort of a tour through the city, police bus storm, fire tour, they took everyone. Maybe you guys do things like that, but as a coach and a dad, it really.
We're used to winning. Right?
Yeah, it certainly was, it was like, this is what a city is all about, right? Like it was, there was a lot of pride to that. It really stood out to me, so anyway. Well, the legislative session is over. I know there's a couple of discussions, both, Nathan, the mayor, wanted to talk about a couple of issues here, and so we'll get there. Let me talk about a couple of high-level things first off. I think one of the things, it almost makes me laugh how significant it was and how it's almost totally been passed over. So in terms of infrastructure, an enormous session this year. A couple of things that I want to point out. So they appropriated $1 billion in cash to infrastructure. Mostly this will be used towards accelerating road projects. The upside of that, of course, is that it moves forward other projects that would have been done later. There probably is a point where UDOT can only do so much, and we might be trying to figure out where that point actually is. But an enormous amount of cash appropriated there. In addition to that, or not in addition, but as part of that $1 billion, appropriation of $382 million, $75 million for Point of the Mountain Transit, and $75 million for double tracking Front Runner, and that's a total of, I think it's like 260 something million towards Front Runner double tracking. This is significant for a couple of reasons. So Representative Christopherson ran a bill this session that is going to move the capital development of state-funded transit projects from UTA to UDOT. We'll see, there's some things that need to be worked out there, and it'll be interesting to see how that process develops. But the reason this is so significant, and it just hasn't been talked about in my mind, the state has never funded transit projects. So we have these transit projects that have happened all over, all over the state, or all over the Wasatch Front. Say that again?
Except Harriman.
Well, fair enough. No. But I think this is why this is key, and I want to raise this. UTA's ability to do capital development projects in the next 10, 15 years was pretty maxed out, particularly if we didn't, if the counties didn't implement the fifth quarter sales tax. And so the fact that the state is now putting money directly into the TTIF, the Transportation Investment Fund, is a massive step forward. And I think accelerates transit projects throughout the state of Utah. There'll still be some issues to be worked out because the service or operations will still be run by UTA. And so how they coordinate that and the money will still be important. But I think a significant first step that we're seeing and an important one that I want to point out, particularly as we think about what I think of is the natural extension of the Point of the Mountain transit line. So the Point of the Mountain transit line essentially starts at the prison property, comes up across and crosses into UTA on the east side of the freeway, kind of up there by where Adobe is, if you think about that, and the outlet malls, and then runs down, past State Road 92 there. So that is the first project, but that ties in quite well to the South Jordan, where it terminates currently, just outside of our boundaries. And so I think something that we can start to think about is how do these projects intersect, start looking at maybe some environmental assessment money to start looking at that. I know right-of-ways being held and some other things that we need to do there. The other point that I want to make there is one of the reasons that they decided to move forward with this Point of the Mountain is they want to relook at the mode of transit. The locally preferred alternative had designated a bus rapid transit from the prison into Utah County. UDOT's first item of business is to look at whether it makes sense to go back to a rail line instead of a BRT line. So just high level wanted to note that for you. In addition to that $1 billion, they also appropriated 40 million for active transportation. And so I don't know if we have any active transportation pathways on the list right now, but certainly a significant contribution towards that. And then in addition to that, just noting infrastructure, a couple of key things that have happened here for Harriman. The jurisdictional transfer of the roads, that's not 134th, but 126th, thank you. 126, there's still some things that need to be worked out there, but we've moved that process forward. It's moved the now terminus for the state road further down the line. And that's something that we'll need to continue to work on to get UDOT fully enmeshed there, get that paid for all the way up to, I guess, would that be U111 is the terminus up there? And so a positive step forward there. In addition, they did something important for the 134 South and Bangerter interchange. They essentially did what they moved that above the line. So there were monies appropriated last year, I can't even remember the amount, I wanna say it was 700 million, slew of projects that were to be done across the state. But the way UDOT was looking at it, that is if that project had a scope increase or a cost increase, that had to be fit within that $700 million. By moving 13400 south above the line, as that scope expands or increases, that's no longer constrained by those specific monies. And so I know that they're gonna be looking at a couple of different options. We had some conversations about that during session, but something that we'll need to, there's talk of that.
They're trying to,
Yeah. And that would of course be a pretty significant cost increase, and so that's why that is a significant step there. And certainly wanna give Representative Perucci due credit for her work on that. And then in addition, 10 million was funded for U111 at the end of 90th South. And so I think you're aware of that, and yeah, so. Any questions there, infrastructure wise, road, transit, anyone wants to bring up? Okay. A couple of other things that Tammy asked me to touch base on. So obviously the legislature, everything is just about money this session, a ton of money going out the door and coming in and moving around, but did a $130 million tax cut this session, lowers the income tax rate from 4.95% to 4.85%, that's the income tax rate. And then also had a $16 million for earned income tax credit, that's a targeted tax credit to lower income earners, and then 15 million for social security tax credit, obviously geared towards those that are receiving social security, so that's not double taxed. And so some not insignificant dollars there, particularly if you are at that earned income tax or the social security tax credit. I think it could be upwards of $350 a year on that front. Okay, a couple of other things I wanna note, let's talk, they put some additional money in the Arpa local matching grant program. This is the program that was administered through GOEO and is used for Arpa eligible related uses, water, broadband, etc. They added an additional 25 million to the 50 million that were already there. I don't think we got any first round grant awards, but we did have some projects submitted there. Am I remembering that correctly? So something that we'll wanna talk about and reach out to the folks on that GOEO board, includes a couple of key people that we'll wanna touch base with there. And then in addition, there was 37 million ongoing for recreation infrastructure. I know this is something that has been looked at here in Harriman in terms of some opportunities. And so these funds were appropriated to Department of Natural Resources and UDOT for both recreation and active transportation. And so some opportunities there. DNR, last I spoke with them towards the end of the session, didn't even have any sort of grant criteria out, but something that we'll wanna be paying attention to and looking for opportunities within that. In addition, 55 million was sent for deeply affordable housing. This is Housing and Homeless Service Grant Program, which is to help provide housing for units at no more than 30% of the area median income. And Mayor, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about homeless. I don't know if you wanna, any thoughts you had?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about 440, so 440 passed, and now if you guys followed it, they're really changing how, from the state level, they almost put it down to find a homeless resource center this year, for this coming winter, basically starting October 1. They put it now on the council of mayors, the 17 mayors in the county to come up with a solution this year. Where before the kind of states kind of tried to dictate where it goes, and now they put it on COM to say, come up with a solution, or else these fail-safes kick in. There's a couple of different fail-safes. Kind of a compromise was reached. Did the 5 million stay in there?
I believe it did, yeah.
It did stay, right? So part of a compromise, they added 5 million to it to help cover those services. Salt Lake City and Midvale and South Salt Lake had asked all of us to kind of rally together as mayors and fight for no flex, because the state really wanted to flex the existing shelters above capacity, but below fire code, like to a certain percentage of fire code rather than capacity, which you asked Midvale, their beds are full, but they're still asking them to flex above the bed because they're still under fire code. So it's that hurts their services, the cost of services around the area goes up. So the Salt Lake City and the others had asked us to not approve the flex, but it came down to a kind of a compromise where I think there is a little bit of flex now in there, but I don't believe they can't come in and override, right? They cannot, did that stay out of there?
From the state side?
Yeah, from the state side.
I'm not sure I know right at the top, but I can make sure.
I didn't ever
double-check
hear
that
where it
too.
ended up.
Yeah.
Basically, there's a couple of fail-safe options, and I think they can,
I guess the state can also always change their mind too, so.
but just, I will be looking to you guys for help as to how to help, because now we are now part of the solution, they're asking us to be a part of the solution. Not necessarily, they know there's no places out here to do this, but are we willing to pay a little more sales tax to the other cities that are taking on the homeless resource centers? Because they have the services, truly, I mean, that's the state's argument is Salt Lake City has the resources around that. They're trying to stay away from, we don't wanna get back to the road home model where they're just warehousing the homeless people. It's just, they need services, they truly need help and, resources. So as COM, we would like to get it to where we don't have to go to those fail-safe options. So, but Mayor Walker tried to put it out there said kind of we'll take a bullet, and man, it was an ugly, anyways.
And that's before September 1, so this has some immediacy in terms of the Council of Governments here in the first class shall prepare and submit to the office an overflow plan in coordination with the local homeless council with jurisdiction over the applicable county, so.
So, anyways, yeah.
Okay. A couple of other things that were significant, a lot of focus on water. I know Tammy and I were just talking a little bit about that, some of the things that need to be done there. They did appropriate money for secondary water metering, and so are essentially putting that cost towards municipalities and suppliers to start moving forward on that. I think we're in pretty darn good shape here in Harriman, but something that they are moving forward with, and other parts of the state, are coming kicking and screaming, but is a recognition that something needed to be done there. And as well, 45 million one time for the Great Salt Lake, to establish a water trust, implement projects or program that retain or enhance water flows, water quality, and or conservation efforts of the Great Salt Lake. It was interesting, this issue really just took hold. Speaker Wilson has really taken interest in making sure that we find ways to maintain Great Salt Lake, but number of focus on water issues generally, how water as an asset is treated, and some of the impacts that go on there, and so some significant things that will continue there. Let me just also note, I think one thing I talked with a couple of folks that feel like this session was picking on everybody, and cities no doubt feel that as well. Want to talk a little bit about House Bill 151. I'll let Nathan talk about that. Mayor, some good work was done on that, and want to applaud Senator McKay, who we didn't get much traction early on in the House side, and so he was helpful in sort of helping create some conversation there that has moved Harriman into a better place on this issue, but deals with retail incentives on that. Nathan, did you want to talk a little bit about this issue?
Yeah, just really the main issue for us is it did pass. It does have the restriction after July 1 of this year. Some of the wiggle room that was put in was the word initiate an agreement. The statute doesn't define what initiate an agreement by that date means. So when we talked to the representative from GOEO, they said they're gonna be fairly broad in their interpretation of that word for us. So if we're in process and have started some formal process, we would argue we have initiated. So certainly for our auto mall property, I think we could make that argument now. But trying to come up with something before that for others, I think we did. So we don't have any end users on certain properties like the corner of 134th and Mountain View. We don't know who would be there to even talk about. The one advantage is that everybody's in the same boat. So I don't know if you had any. We got to a spot where it became evident that was the best we were gonna get.
Chase, I know we were going back and forth a little bit. Do you still think I know it wouldn't be an end user, but we talked about possibly even going to SLR on like that corner. Initiating a process to create a CDRA.
So the city can contract with an end user for certain purposes as well. That's already listed within state statute of what you can do directly with the state. With the auto mall, the municipality cannot contract with an end user, so use the workaround of the CDRA there, right? So we wouldn't have to go through all the hoops to set up a CDRA for that area and get a project area identified. We could just do a direct incentive between the city and SLR. We've done that in the past. We've done that with Anthem. We have a participation agreement with the developer, right, not with the end user, because they are the ones. They're essentially build-to-suits, right? So we're paying the developer those costs for that.
So you suggest we do like an MOU or something like we were doing?
You can do a participation agreement for sales tax before July 1 with the end user or with the developer.
Is there
Or with the developer. But again, it's restricted. You can't do it for, what are the limitations? 80,000 square feet or under?
So in current lots, it's can't, and this existed before this and they retained it, you can't incentivize a grocery store larger than 30,000 square feet. I can't remember if it stayed at 30, if it dropped back down to 20. They went back and forth. And you can't do
There are certain
something
restrictions,
under over 80,000 square feet.
So it's still a narrow incentive, but it's an incentive nonetheless, right?
just contemplating a question, if you initiated something that with the developer, that would be fine in a build-to-suit situation. If they were to sell the land, is there an ISAOA clause or something like that you can do that would allow that to transfer to it?
Yeah, you could,
Really?
one of the things that we've talked about is, I think you might get challenged on that, right? Because this is what they're trying to nip in the bud, is
Sure.
to say, we wanna take away the city's ability to do that. One of the things that I thought we could potentially do is to say, all right, we're gonna have a 25-year term with this person and just keep assigning it down the, assign it and assign it and assign it, but that, I wouldn't take that risk, right? I wouldn't,
We don't want to become the target again of
Yeah.
legislation.
And it's greater than 20,000 square feet unless certain exceptions are met.
Let's
Next
be
year's
realistic,
net.
I mean, we're good now. One, if it's the same for everyone. Two, what we're talking about is the city's portion of sales tax, which isn't the gigantic amount.
Chris,
Would be
didn't
whatever they
address that
generate.
it could not be reassigned?
They took that out.
Oh, they did take it
removed
out,
the ability, or that when they put in there, you could not amend an agreement, we were
But you
able to
could
get that
still
out.
do, okay.
The big ones they're trying to do away with are the property tax.
Right.
That's the big one.
So we can talk whether we want to even stress this. I mean, I think,
Because, I mean, really, if we're giving away the thing that we're trying to get, right? It's almost kind of shoot
And
yourself in the foot if
it's
everyone
all
else
in
in the
Evil's
same bit.
footing, then we get to compete on a
we're all on
level
the same
playing field and
and that's kind of where we got to the point. If we're gonna be
location speaks for itself,
Yeah,
right?
if we're gonna be at a certain level of build out, they're gonna wanna come, people are gonna wanna be out here just because it's best for their business. we just kinda wanna put that out there so we know what the deadline that's out there if we wanna do this tool. I think it has pushed the Automall people forward faster, the end users, you know, the Travises and the Colbys, if you will, are very, that's brought them full speed. I mean, they wanna have stuff in place by.
Yeah,
And having those anchor stores bring the auxiliary ones, even if we had something on 134th and on View, and we had jumped into an agreement or something and brought an anchor store in there or something.
One benefit of this may force some of those groups to make decisions a little quicker right now. They're trying to get in under that, that timeline, so we can certainly reach out to SLRs, have some conversation to see where they're at.
I think John Gus reaching out this week, like John Gus to reach out to me with, I mean, there's some, even some, I think there's some desire from John to find a partner on 118th and 60th to, before this. Again, not that we have to do it, but I just think it's, he wants that.
we talked to our retail recruiter about this too, to message that down to any potential
Yes,
suitors,
and we have, he's supposed to call, it's tomorrow Thursday, he's supposed to call tomorrow too for another update, so.
There's been a lot of movement this week on the commercial side, let's just say that, a lot of.
I even received 3 or 4 phone calls from a Facebook post that was a joke, but some people, it brought some ears up from the auto industry stuff, some friends and stuff that called me.
Just throw it out as those conversations happen. I'm sure they're eager to get something in writing that they can receive something, but we need to stipulate a time period. Right? You know,
Yep.
Because of the situation, we're going to do this, but we'll need to build it by X date.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think that was really clear in some of our communications this week was
Shovel
no
ready,
carts
let's go.
before any horses here, you know, this is gonna be something we do hand in hand, and we're happy to give you certain incentives, but you have to do certain things to get them.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just note, on that and a number of other bills, obviously Cam Deal, the league team did a great job, and, you know, this definitely was looked at as kind of the Harriman issue as it related to this kind of the unique issue that Harriman brought forward, and the way that Harriman has responded on a number of things, including on the affordable housing front, and so. Anyway, just one other note for you, obviously, it's election season, and we've just gone through redistricting, so I'm sure you all know, but a number of changes coming in terms of who represents who and what areas. We're gonna have, I'm calling it the new Oker Mountain seat, Senate seat, which includes Tooele and Kearns. You love that one, is that?
Yeah, the
Harriman
boundary
and
makes a
Eagle
lot
Mountain.
of sense.
Yeah, a ton of sense. And so a couple of candidates are running for that seat from Harriman. Senator Thatcher, of course, is running again, but some opportunities to build some relationships. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that there are different senators that are located in your city. If I'm not mistaken, now we will have 3. And I think we have 3 now, but we're just shifting them around. But Senator Fillmore, Senator McKay, and whoever, Senator Thatcher, or whoever were to win that seat. And so definitely some conversations we'll want to start having with those folks here as we get into the summer, and we know who's going to win those seats. So anyway, happy to answer any questions here or later, and appreciate a little bit of your time this evening.
And I would say, talking to Tammy before and Chris a little bit before, we're gonna make it a point this year, we're gonna start talking now, we're gonna get proactive. Like, we're done being reactive as a city to the bills that are coming out, like, it's time for us to go to our senators and our representatives.
And request certain
Yeah,
bills.
request things that will. So
Yeah.
if you think of stuff that could benefit, whether it be projects, whether it be money, whether it be, we're talking about Jackie, you know, there's some stuff that Jackie would like to see on some
Speak to
some noticing type stuff. I mean, stuff that we may, you know, and hopefully you guys pass that down to staff, if there's anything down the staff level that we're not aware of, that we can help push up the way, please let us know what we can do to help, so. But we're gonna start talking in the next month or so, already anticipating, so,
You know, and I think that's really important in a conversation, I don't wanna jump the gun, but Candace made a presentation to the Association of Municipal Councils on Tuesday, and as part of that conversation, there was some pretty strong feedback that she got from the municipalities about some of the bills and how they're impacting. And her words were, you know, up on the hill, it's a little bit, despite, you know, the openness of the hill, it's pretty cloistered group, and they really talk to themselves and a few lobbyists, and the rest of the world kind of gets shut out. And it's after they get back out of there and they start getting feedback from everybody that they realize kind of what they did or didn't do. So giving the feedback ahead of time is probably a much better strategy, right?
Well, and I think just even the perspective of some of the things that are happening in Harriman or what Harriman looks like now versus 2 years ago, 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago. I don't know that a lot of people have seen that or experienced that, and I think that's important that we demonstrate that. You know, even South Jordan, which has its challenges, that we share some of those. It does. If they were to think, I know that part of the valley, thinking of old South Jordan or South Jordan, even with the district, and then recognizing what's actually happened out here in Harriman. I mean, the change is just night and day, and I don't think a lot of people really appreciate that because unless you're coming out here, it's not a place you're driving through. And so, something that we probably need to do a better job of sharing with a couple of key people.
Wonder if we do a phone flyover or something. That's just my interference. And do like, the We Are Harriman and how it's changed over and see.
Talked about that,
Yeah.
we need to get our message out there. What if 151 did
Or
anything?
this year, trying to call it.
We may not have got everything we wanted on 151, but the one thing it did, everybody knows between Cam and, Tammy, everybody knows what Harriman looks like now because we
Yeah.
put maps and pictures in front of everybody up there. They now know what we look like out here. So we're being noticed. We're a player now. We're a factor in these discussions.
Hey guys, this is Sherry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi Sherry.
Hi, sorry, I'm just gonna add to that in that I agree that they can see maps and pictures and stuff like that, but anything we can do to encourage them to come to our city to see too, if we had some sort of a big open house tour to the legislators, come out and see our city so you
When
can
they
see
have to
some of
travel
the
during rush hour.
things that we've done.
Having a fight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think feeling it versus seeing it in a picture sometimes is different too. So if we could even do something like that really got them out here to see exactly our community and the changes that have occurred out here over the last several years. I'm not saying that show up, but if we invite them, they might.
Can we put something like that? Can we look at staff on the staff side? Let's do
Yeah.
something.
We're gonna
They're
see if we
collaborate.
can
Something like that on a
figure
regular
something out, cause
basis.
we've tried to schedule tours before and it's very difficult to get them out here, but we may be able to come up with something.
I know when we were doing a bunch of Olympia Hills stuff, we got a lot of the city council, county council out here.
County council.
And it was great to tour them around and they had no idea.
Sure.
Some of them had been Harriman for 20 years.
I think even if, it's bold, but I think even speaker, the speaker and the Senate president, I've seen them spend some time with local people up in Davis County. That's their stomping grounds. But I think if we were to, let's shoot big and let's get some of these big.
Even get the
names out
governor
here.
out.
Even get, yeah.
Wilson and Schultz would be the ones that I would love, I think would be key targets. The speaker may have been out here more recently, but I think those would be the two that are driving a lot of the
I don't think
conversation.
any of
that's
them
impacting
came
it.
here. They were at the groundbreaking for the college ground, which I pointed out that day. If you think this is Harriman, this is not Harriman.
sadly
Go 2 miles
correct.
that way.
Yeah.
And I guarantee none of them have been out here.
Okay, and whatever you guys can do, we as well.
Good idea.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, Chris, thank you so
Thanks,
much for
guys.
your work this year.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Chris.
Okay, we'll move on to, Sherry, you still there? See how close she is.
Yeah, I'm just driving. I'm just got off of Bangeter and 126. I'll be there in 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect, okay. Okay, so let's do we want Sherry here for 2-1.
You can go to 2-5, right?
We can do 2-3 and then 2-5 and then go
Are
back
we
to
okay with
2-1
that,
and
even though we
2-2.
didn't really, we have,
She's also on 2-3 and 2-5.
Right.
She participates in those meetings as well.
What's the time?
Sorry, Steve can do a good job leading out on the internet stuff though, and I'm listening and I can tune in if I need.
okay, so let's move 2-5, so let's move 2-5.
Alright. I don't have a presentation for this, but there was a report sent out to all the council and it was included in the packet. Draft of our final findings as the high-speed internet task force, which I think should be renamed the broadband task force. So what we did was when we started looking into it, the task that was put to us was to look at how to better provide high-speed internet options to the residents of Harriman. As we got looking through what's available out there and talking to industry professionals, we actually had one professional that was part of our task force. He's actually, I think, on the phone, so if we have any questions as we get into it, he can help us out with some technical stuff. But as we got talking through it, we found out that there was really a break. If you just want to do internet, we're kind of doing that already, and we're not doing the private sector. You're kind of relying on them entirely to provide the service. And what we found across all the cities is the private sector is not really filling the need right now. They're kind of underperforming. There's not a lot of incentive for these companies to go into the older areas of town and light these areas up. And so Harriman sees it a little bit, but some cities like Sandy and stuff, they're seeing it more. And so you've seen Google Fiber come in and try to capture some of these cities, and they're actually moving into Riverton and South Jordan. And they're a good option if all you want to do is provide high-speed internet to them. But as we got looking into it, there's a lot of benefit to having a broadband network, a system, owned or partially owned, public-private partnership, something on my words, something like that, to get an infrastructure built that you can control your city systems, like your stormwater outlets, your water meters, your traffic signals. So many things that could happen in the future too with that. And so owning that system, or partially owning it, is a great incentive to the city. It's a great asset to have. And it provides the city a lot of opportunity to provide internet to its residents, but the primary focus of it would be to make the city a smart city and run their systems, connect our buildings. I didn't even mention like the police and fire using this system with all the requirements for body cams and stuff being connected all the time to servers and city systems. So when we looked through that, we broke it into a few options. There was like the private, or the, what do we call it? I can't remember the exact name of it. There's an exhibit on the back of this. And so you've seen this exhibit in your packet. So there's the private service provider model, and that's basically what we do right now. We're relying entirely on the private sector to provide high-speed internet. And we also rely on that same system. And then you work up to the full utility model, which is like the water system that we run. And so everybody would pay a fee, and everybody would have an opportunity to, or would be connected and pay no matter what. And then there's these options in the middle where it's kind of a utility model, but you can either, there's an opt-in or an opt-out. And so the opt-in, the idea of that is you send out to everybody and say, hey, we're gonna put this system in, and if you want in, you can hop in, and here's the fees, and here's how much it costs. And the opt-out would be, hey, we're coming to your house, and we're gonna put it to your house and connect everything up, and if you don't want it, opt out. And what that would include is, what we're foreseeing is it's similar to like the Utopia system, where you would run, the city would run the backbone, and would get fiber to each home and to all the city buildings and all the infrastructure. And then there would be a list of providers, internet service providers, that they could choose from, and they would provide all the support for email and internet. And so, the recommendation from the task force is to do the opt-out model. And that would meet all the needs that we found as we collected input from the residents, that would meet the needs that the residents and the city desires. And Steve, I'd love to have you speak to it, because you've heard the most about it, you've done a lot of research, you're pretty knowledgeable about this item.
Yeah, thanks for dumping that on me.
Yeah,
I was
you're
like,
welcome.
here you go. Yeah, I want to reiterate a point, because I think this is a key part of this discussion, is that our original task was to find a way to bring a high-speed internet service to every resident of the city, whereas the private service provider model really isn't satisfying what everybody's needs are. Either the speed and quality of the service isn't what people are demanding, or they're not able to get a decent service to their location. As we got into it, we realized that the solutions for internet are kind of a different conversation than a broadband infrastructure for the city. Our conversation switched from just a conversation about internet to essentially a very little about a conversation about internet service and more about a broadband infrastructure. But it is the creation of the broadband infrastructure that would allow for high-speed internet to be to every home in the city, and an ability to control the service levels that any of those various providers would be required to provide, if that makes sense. Instead of having it a free-for-all and people could offer a crappy service or really excellent service, everybody would have to offer pretty substantial service on this network. Some of the things that are really exciting about it, or I think really beneficial about it, are the fact that we had a presentation from Dr. Reichard. At least anecdotally, he might be the foremost expert on municipal broadband infrastructure in the country. He's on more boards and task forces and organizations than I can even comprehend. One of the things that he really stressed, and is part of the thing that I would say that the task force really accepted and endorsed this message, is that a broadband infrastructure for a city really should be looked at as an essential utility. As essential as water, as essential as electricity or sewer. And that in the not too near future from now, many of the problems that we as a city might be facing really can't be solved without this infrastructure being in place. Especially when we talk about things like water, air quality, traffic, services, just on and on and on and on and on, are all enhanced or even facilitated by this backbone being installed. When that became the focus, it really kind of clarified what the options are to make it work. The option that checks all of the boxes, that allows for the most flexibility, that provides the most benefit to the most people in the most affordable way, that creates more competition, enhanced services, is really the opt-out model. All of the other models would fall short of accomplishing all of those goals, in my opinion. Or at least would accomplish those goals for not everybody, I think would be the way to say it. So I'm not sure what questions there are, or what we could do to offer some more explanation about it, but as a committee, we were pretty unified and strongly endorsed that was the recommendation we wanted to make to the council as a whole. And feel like there are some reasons to consider expediting our actions on this and start moving forward aggressively. I would say that I think the municipalities that chose to partner with a private entity coming in and installing a high-speed network in their cities, in a few years will end up being faced with the same decision that we're trying to make right now, which is they're gonna have to go back and reinstall a broadband infrastructure, or they're gonna have to pay a lot of money to buy the infrastructure somebody else put in. So, how's that?
Great.
So as I recall, early on in this process, the main issue was how do you fund it?
Wait, don't go there yet.
That's what
That's
I
a whole
think
different
the-
conversation.
That's what I think the next step is if the council is interested in this opt-out model, I think we could engage with our team and a consultant and start putting together a financial plan for this and bring it back and present how that would work, how long it would take to light up internet to the whole city, a timeline on that, and the funding structure for that, if that would be
Yeah, we do have some strategies, but I think that it really depends on what this council says before we could
Yeah.
go down that road.
We haven't not had those kind of conversations, obviously, it's like at the end of, oh, yep, this looks pretty, well, how do we pay for it, so we know that. But when we come to this point, it's like, okay, we think this is the best way to go, but funding will be much different in each option, so it's like, well, we don't wanna pursue this if the council don't wanna go in this direction, so let's
And
have
and
a
that,
financial part.
that's one thing that we talked about too was regardless of the direction that the council chooses to go, if they're gonna endorse the recommendation and say we should move forward and get more information, I think we will announce at a point where saying, okay, there's no more off-ramps after this point. But until then, there are numerous off-ramps and numerous possibilities to change direction or reverse course. So there's nothing being committed except for some, time and discussion efforts to organize some of this stuff.
Do you guys have any questions about the opt-in, opt-out? Opt-out is better as far as a financial model, and my comments have always been, the only way I can be supportive of this, because it's almost like a utility model, because people will be paying a fee unless they opt out. But it's because that fee is a benefit to the whole city. It's not just like, cause I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum sometimes, it's like, oh well, I have slow internet. It's like, oh well, I live with it, you know what I mean? But some people couldn't function without that. And so I don't want to charge the people in the city a fee so that everybody can have high-speed internet. I'm not okay with that. But if you could show me the benefit and the cost reductions, cause there's potential cost savings and cost reductions, water savings, all kinds of stuff like that for the city, if we implement this type of a broadband that allows us into SCADA systems and things like that, then it ends up being a way for us to be much more efficient as a city. And it's like, okay, that makes sense that the city residents would participate in a fee to create a city that's more efficiently run.
Be interesting to see what that part looks like. So the funding discussion and how to pay for it, I can kind of envision that. What I'm curious to see is, all right, well, when it comes down to me comparing, my internet service is okay. It does what we need it to, and we don't have any issues. And it's, $40 a month. So is it gonna be more than that or less than that? That's what probably 80% of the city's residents are gonna.
Sure. And I'll tell you preliminary, the things that we've looked at, you're gonna be pretty close to the same what most people pay now. But that's all a little bit hypothetical, right? We have to inject the numbers in and say, this is what the participation will probably be like.
I'm jumping to the
No,
to the
no,
end.
No, but
We've all had that
I
same
think there's a
conversation.
difference, is that
Yeah.
the idea is that, realistically, it's the public-private partnership option that creates the most opportunity for competition, which leads to enhanced services and lower costs. We truly see this, the infrastructure for this network would theoretically support 10 gig speeds.
Means nothing to somebody like me.
I got it. But
So I turn it
for,
on, does it
Jared
work?
couldn't get on our
I know.
meeting this
You
morning.
could have got on this morning, no, I'm just.
but for a huge percentage of, for students, for business people, for,
Tech companies.
for tech companies, for even video gamers, whatever, the higher speeds are important. The other thing is that most of the providers now, because of the technology that they use, they're forced to throttle those speeds. So even if you're paying for
100 megabits.
a gig speed, there are, in the evening when everyone's using it or on a weekend or whatever, those speeds are gonna be throttled way, way down. In this new network, that won't happen. so that there will be pretty much insane speeds. The other thing is, and we didn't really talk about this, is the utility itself becomes part of our economic development offering. It allows the backbone for businesses into this city, tech companies in this city, to have really unparalleled high-speed internet access, as well as the backbone to do, all the other things they may want to do. That's really where the cool part comes in, is I think that we'll be able to get better, more consistent speeds at about or less than what most people are paying for internet right now.
If I might, that's what the end user will see, but there really is, I think, a demand in the future for the connectivity for other city infrastructure to be able to talk, and the SCADA systems we have the ability to collect an enormous amount of data, but we tend not to, and we limit what they do because they're on radios and they send very basic, but that technology is out there, so you can make a determination if a storm drain basin is going to be in danger of overflowing. It can warn you in a computer instead of having to send crews running around what we do now. So there will become a point, frankly, I think that's how traffic will probably be handled in a lot of big cities. Eventually, the computers will be timing the lights based on what the demands are because of the.
So in reality, there's no other way to solve our traffic issues unless you have something like that,
But watering as
But
well with
public
timers and clocks,
safety, even things like, smart cars and things like that people wanna have, can't really make those work without broadband infrastructure. You can't make some of the public transportation ideas that UTA has been pioneering possible without a broadband infrastructure, like autonomous shuttles and things like that. However, with a broadband network, that stuff isn't fairy tale land. That's all, that could be, we use this term tomorrow technology versus, down the road technology. This opens the door to all of these things tomorrow.
So Chief, can I put you on the spot just because you're down there? Is there dead spots in our city and would this help alleviate the dead spots for our officers?
I don't know, we work off of LTE, so our computers connect to LTE. I don't know how that would work here.
What's LTE?
I don't know what else.
LTE is cell signal.
Cell signal.
Yeah, it's cell signal. That's how they operate.
It's like 2G.
This could help
Yeah.
get the fiber in the ground so the 5G towers could be connected to it, which
Actually,
expedites.
I mean, Alan and I have sent, registers that our computers keep track of where the dead spots are for them to realign their antennas with Verizon. I don't know that they ever have, do you?
They say they're working on it, but we haven't seen anything.
We haven't seen
But we
anything.
know every spot that's dead and when it's dead.
We have software on the computers that when we lose it, it'll turn it back on for the officer when they come back in so that they're not fiddling around with the computer. But if you've ridden in the cars, you'll hear them bing, 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 bing. It's telling the officer, hey, something's wrong with your computer. You're not going to get calls now, other than on the.
So that's where they park most of the time.
So, well, then,
Hey, I'm just curious.
interesting you mentioned that, because if they're out on the south end of Mountain View corridor, as soon as they get past about 140, it goes dead. So they can't park out there and do the reports. In fact, they can't even check out on a traffic stop out there on their computer. They can on their radio, but there's no connection, so.
Is this possible to have a mesh network through the city on this?
actually, it is the backbone to build, not 5G. That's yesterday's technology.
Yeah.
This is for building 6G, 7G, 8G networks, high speed.
So we're buying new
Stuff
computers.
beyond what
yeah,
anybody's
I mean,
thinking
if
about.
we-
Yeah, I mean, truly remarkable stuff, yeah.
If we get better service, for sure it'll work better, but right now we're pretty limited in the city.
If you were to do the public-private partnership, the broadband infrastructure in the ground would be your fiber, your conduit. The equipment to move it into these future 5G, 8G,
Yeah.
12G, whatever it is,
It'll be on the consumer.
is on, not on it's on the partner that we would have.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
whatever the contract we would write would require them to keep their equipment up to a certain level, to keep providing a certain level of service.
But that's on the city side, but every consumer can choose the provider
They would
they
choose
want,
their
right?
provider, so if they like this one because it's more
Yeah.
business oriented and this one because it's
Yep.
more gaming oriented.
Yep.
Well, and I think that's where my questions come in, my concern is, I like everything about it. My concern is gonna be that ownership on the backside. You know, there have been, I did some, done some digging, asking around. There've been 3 instances just recently where this similar model has failed in other cities. Eagle Mountain, American Fork, and Provo. I think we're similar models and they eventually, one of them sold to Google Fiber. American Fork used that AF Connect. They tried selling that multiple times and they're just still stuck managing it, so.
Todd's online. Todd, can you hear us? He knows a lot about this.
Yeah, we don't believe that there's another city that has
He's not there.
this model on this
So that's a great
scale right
question
now.
we need to follow
Yeah,
up
that's
on.
my-
Those are, in American Fork, I know, going through some change. Provo, some of those existed, there were some state law changes, and so they're actually the internet service provider themselves.
Right.
And so in this model, we would not be an
Right.
internet service.
And neither would our.
Yeah, we've got a
partner.
contract, there's somebody, right.
The model we're proposing is very similar, or exactly, like to what Lehigh just barely chose to go with.
Yes.
Didn't Bountiful do something as well?
I think he said Heber did too, right?
Heber, yeah, I think that's right.
And they just did city buildings right now in Bountiful or something. I think that was that meeting we were at, at Hill.
But no, it's a good follow-up, we'll make sure that we follow up on that.
Yeah, actually, in an opt-in model, there's not a substantial, I would say, but there's a risk of the system not paying for itself, right, and it failing.
Well,
In the opt-out model, based on the preliminary numbers we ran, it's almost impossible that it's not successful and sustainable.
Well, I'm okay with opt-out, I think that's the right model, I do think that's the right model, my concerns, I think, and we can address those, I guess I'm okay going down this path with the opt-out. It's just
Yeah, it's a
cost,
Yeah,
is
Be,
gonna
be
the
prepared
cost,
to show me the worst case scenario.
exactly.
we always are.
I'm assuming we're gonna
We
phase
always
this
are.
in and it's gonna be a multi-year thing.
I think
You'd
it's
have to
3-year
figure out
thing.
how to build it
And we're gonna
out.
go on the very farthest west end of the
Sixth
city
Street
first.
I think the fastest you could probably light up the whole city is maybe 2 years. So you could maybe do it in 1 year if you were like really fast, but you're
Depends on the
looking
partner.
at probably somewhere between 1 to 7 year model, like those two ideas.
And are there any grants for this or programs? I'm assuming there's gotta be something.
State just passed that broadband.
I mean, you could have used ARPA money
Yeah.
for it.
So,
What we found,
but we didn't get that.
our,
It's really
our
big.
early on
Yeah.
research on that was that the rural communities were really at an advantage to get funding and urban communities were not, so we were kind of left in the dark.
Are we a rural
And if
community?
you also have to show, like, they also give money to communities who have low income
Yep.
and hardships, and we don't qualify for that either, so.
That's why we started looking at this public-private partnership, that was a good way. Another thing to note is with the opt-in, or the opt-out model with this partnership would be, a lot of the, maintenance and upkeep of the system falls onto the private sector. So it really does increase city staffing, there might be one person that takes on some of the responsibility, but I don't think there's a big increase in staffing on that side, unless we chose to take over some of the management of some of those other things.
I think that's the idea of you hire an operator
Yeah.
to do it under contract.
That's what they do
Yeah,
for
we
a
would be
living.
contracting with a really, well-endorsed, contractor to do all that, and we create the network and we own the network and we operate the network, but we're not the internet service provider, if that makes sense. Like, we're not in the business of competing with private entities to provide that service. And for a lot of people, the service provider you have now will likely be a service provider on the new network, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
and like, to your point, Jared, but then we have to look at it and say, oh, well, this is what I'm getting now from my current service
Level
provider,
service,
and you wanna change everything, and now I'm gonna pay twice as much, that'd be a hard sell. So we have to really understand that.
I mean, anybody that's had problems is probably gonna jump at it.
Yeah.
Anybody else that hasn't had any issues, why would I?
Yeah, but if you can show that the benefits.
Why would I make a change?
We're
Yeah,
gonna talk to,
we-
we're gonna talk to
yeah.
Mindy, she'll
Yeah.
But you know, but but I think the reality is this is where Sherry's argument came in, is that, you know, there's people who make that argument all the time. Why would I pay for stormwater? I don't need an issue. Why should I pay for a park? I don't use a park. Why should I pay for a dog park? I don't own a dog.
For the schools.
Right? Or I don't pay for
Street
schools, I don't have
lights.
kids, or street, right? The people make these arguments all the time. And that's fine if you're just choosing a luxury service, if you're choosing a service, right? When we're talking about a utility, that's a different argument. This is a backbone infrastructure for the city for its future.
But it's a new utility.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because I already have that service.
Well,
Right.
you have
You
your
have
home, but
internet,
not as
you
a
don't have a
city
broadband infrastructure, so
That-
that's the
that's
difference.
different.
I'm
Yeah.
just at the end of this, right, when the
Mhm.
financing model runs out, is how many people are gonna choose this over what they currently have? That's my only point, is that
Yeah, no, for
when
sure.
it gets to that point, it's gonna be, why would I change?
And we have the opt-out option for those that come to that realization or that decision that they would not want it, they can opt out.
I'll
In
pay for Jared's.
but in the future,
I always have to
there will be
do the
a,
devil's
there'll be
advocate thing,
a,
but I, no, this
expensive
is,
cost
this is
to
the
hook up to
direction
the
that we need
future
to go and look at it and do
Yeah.
the numbers and see, but ultimately it comes down to
We'll probably get something put together, be able to come back in probably about a month, I think. And we'll look at the worst case scenario. We'll look at some of their other models that they put together of similar opt-in situations and how many people have actually opted in. Pull some demographics to make sure we're comparing apples to apples.
He means opt-out.
I mean, opt-out.
Yeah.
I get those mixed up all the time
I-
when I'm talking.
I would love to see the cost potential savings too, or even the infrastructure we have to put into our storm drains and our water systems and the city buildings. I know that's projection, right, in a year or two when this is in, but the upgrades we have to do, but also the cost savings with truck rolls and with, you know, several guys out there, staffing out there. I mean, honestly, if we have another, you know, storm drain situation where we've got people running around emergency stuff, I mean, you can do that from a computer and a desk. I mean, that's significant.
And I know, like Sandy's had this for a few years, they run it off, I think, Cell or something, but they have gates on the ponds, so they monitor it from their office or from their phone at home when it's raining at midnight. And they say, oh, this pond is 99% full, but the one down below is only 60, so
Yeah.
they'll open gates and move water around and prevent flooding, so.
Yeah.
Okay, we have direction then? We good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate your time you put into that. Look forward to hearing. Here we go. Okay. We have 15 minutes. I don't know if we get through 2.2. I don't wanna divide up 2.2 too much. Can we do 2.3?
So you had discussed last time, if that's what you wanna do, that it would kinda be the less staff telling you
Right.
what we've done,
Yep.
and more kinda.
We okay doing 2.3 then? Should we do that then? 2.3, okay. Are we okay with that?
Staff's fine.
2.3, working group update for the proposed auto mall, Laguna, Malibu. Let's do it with Laguna and Malibu first. Any updates anybody wants to share on Laguna, Malibu? Steve, you got anything on Laguna, Malibu?
no, I missed the last meeting, you were there.
Oh, that's right. You didn't, you were doing your.
You gave me the
live.
update, so, yeah.
I can give some updates.
Please, go ahead.
I mean, it's a
I'm
committee,
trying to
right?
find
There's
my notes.
there's a lot of us, so we didn't meet yesterday, we generally meet every Tuesday. The reason we didn't meet yesterday is we received some pretty detailed design guidelines from the group, the development group. And so we took the week off to have our staff review those. I know planning, some engineering staff are going through some of those design guidelines to provide some feedback.
And a Sherpa meeting.
We had a Sherpa meeting, right, go through some details, so some technical aspects that don't require the full working group, so I don't know, if there's much to update from that.
There's a lot of homework on their part to come back, but there was a lot of good discussion points and we didn't identify any big concerns or items, but there's more detail that we need from them. So that's what we talked about.
And are you talking not only design guidelines, but part of the traffic impact study and things like that, or?
Yeah, so we haven't seen the traffic impact
Oh,
study
we
yet.
haven't seen it yet.
He talked like it was days away from
That's what I thought.
receiving it. So we did talk about, providing maps and things that identify where they're going to have those different road cross sections, cause that's easier to visualize and see how they're gonna be utilized. That was one of the major, our biggest focus was actually around storm drain. How we can make those things work, cause there are a lot of concerns about if we require the park, if they're gonna encompass park and storm drain retention at the same point, similar to what some Olympia wants to do. And it doesn't sound like they were anxious to do that, they wanna separate them, so that's kind of the road I think we're going down, to where they're not going to combine those two, which I think is good. LID was a big discussion point on how to handle it up there in the hills, cause you have a lot of grades where some LID components don't work, so BMPs just don't work up there. We didn't get into any water infrastructure or anything, any details, cause that road cross sections and storm drain took most of the time, so.
Cause it seems like, and I don't think we've had this discussion there yet either, but I was just seeing Chief over there and I'm like, that is a huge wildland interface up there, right? That's a nightmare for fire, and so do we need to really implement a lot of that discussion in there too, make sure that we do the maximum amount possible to make sure that the design guidelines are following, helping prevent a lot of that,
So
interface
that's
problems?
a great point, and they actually start talking about that, the safe areas around the houses. So they've acknowledged it, I can't remember which meeting that was brought up in. So they did indicate, they showed us a picture, well, here's the house and here's how we're gonna have the landscaping to provide that defensible space. So they are thinking about it. The other, and it came up in one of the meetings, we did have that conversation, but it's kind of back onto them right now to show how they're going to deal with that in their design guidelines.
Okay, just another thing to make sure they're really cognizant of that. I know Wendy has been, we talked about that park the access there. Are we gonna develop this, or what are we gonna do with it? Make sure we're concrete on what we're doing with that, so we don't have undersize the roads to that. And then again, the wildland thing, I don't know that we've had enough really good conversations about that to make sure that that's hardwired into it too.
I believe there's a wildland urban interface document put together that we could just reference.
It's specific to that area?
Specific to this foothill development
Oh, yeah.
in general. I think Dan DeVoe provided that at some point. So
And I think that went back to the developers to put some.
Okay.
defensible space, and hydrants and
Hydrants, water
locations,
supplies.
things like that.
Yeah, and the infrastructure,
Meetings back about it.
yeah, in the infrastructure meeting, they kind of did an overview of the whole plan, and they gave us a broad overview, and they had some of the material ready for both meetings, but they give a pretty good detail about like house plots and circle maps and like the infrastructure, like how many units per this area and pod. That was really clever how they did that. It's just the perception, right? Until they actually get out there, and then they had a cool idea for the park or bus turnarounds and bus
Oh, I
lane
saw that
stops.
one.
That was really
Yeah.
clever. I thought that was, even if we don't do bus stops up there, but we use those for other things like parking trails and whatnot, access. It was, I was sad when it was canceled last meeting for the Sherpa meeting, but it was like, cause it was exciting. They brought some new shows and new slides, so I think they're turning the corner and moving forward, but it's having the traffic study and then the road systems, the trail systems, and then identifying what trails and sidewalks and stuff, so.
You know, just from conversations I've had, Sharon and I had this conversation, and Lauren and I were going through this, is this, I think part of their ability to make this development pencil out is going to be a discussion about whether or not the main roads are system improvements or capital improvements, right? And that's a big crux of issue for them, a central issue here for them. You know, their point of view is that they're providing access to the foothills, but
Get reversed.
yeah, but one of the things that we recognize is there's a lot of access already up there, the trails are already in place, there's, you know, we're building trailheads in multiple locations and we don't really need them to build a road for us to have access to those areas, so I think that, you know, the council's gonna have to be part of that discussion, but to realize if, you know, there's some specific amenity that we want up there for the city, then our share of the road cost is going to, you know, increase exponentially. If we don't do that, obviously we don't have as much interest in building the road, but that also makes it much harder for the developer to make something that makes sense. That's a big expensive road to go up the middle of that canyon, so.
That's why it's so important for us to know that, it's like, cause it's not just what it's gonna cost us to develop that, but it's what's gonna cost us to pay for the road to get there too. Is it worth it? Is it worth that access? And is it bringing them in to have events? Is it bringing them in to spend their money in our community and leaving? That kind of thing. If it's not, then it's like,
Where's the draw? Yeah.
I think the events, cause they talked about bringing in people for bike races and all those things, and I just don't see it there.
Right.
Butterfield
Especially
is
with-
going to
yeah.
be that,
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be, it's too far removed,
and it's graded, it's up the side of the mountain.
And I think they might have taken the aspect of saying, oh, we'll see bikers on there, the trail riders and the road bikers coming down those hills, cause that's fun.
Yeah.
But
Wait, is there
the
7-Eleven
competition.
on the trail or something? How,
Maybe.
the question is how you capture the dollars.
Yeah.
No matter what event it is, or it's where does
Yeah.
that traffic go on the way in and on the way out?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now, there's not, I mean, there's some commercial, I guess, on Mountain View, but.
No, where they're talking about, it would all go out the south end of the city
Yep.
and
And there might be a gas
bypass all of our
station there,
retail
and it's like, but is
stuff,
that
all our
really-
restaurants and all that stuff.
There might be a gas station there, and how long is it gonna take for us to make enough revenue back to pay for the road and everything to get up there?
Yeah.
300 years.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what the gas price is,
It's
right?
already
Yeah,
done.
Well, yeah,
that's
the
right.
gas prices.
He's already done the math.
We did talk probably in the infrastructure meeting, because of where this road is at, and how far removed it is from a law enforcement standpoint and fire, there may need to be some sort of special assessment district to cover those costs. Those roads are quite steep, so normally where we would have crews out plowing, you may need to have people just dedicated to that road because how steep it is. And do you do that for one small part of your community, they get this premium service because
No.
they've chosen to live on a road like
Exactly.
that, so.
You do
That's
it
what a
as long
special
as you
service
do
district
special
is for, it's
services
gonna
district.
cost more money to
The two
pump
plows,
water
right,
up the
Monty,
hill.
I heard two plows probably just to plow this.
Right.
What did you tell me, it was zone 9?
Somebody said that.
Yeah, it goes up.
It goes up to zone 9 and we have
Yeah.
zone 5 right
Yeah.
now.
Similar to like,
We have a
I
zone
think
5
Traeger,
contemplated,
they
right?
don't
We
have
have a 6
plows,
right now.
specifically in Suncrest, they have blowers that are out in front of the trucks like that in Wyoming at high elevations too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't wanna discourage and say, we're opposed to this, but these are just the realities of the financial impact it has to the city, and if it pencils out for them to meet those long-term O&Ms for us, then it pencils out. If it doesn't, then find a different project.
And I think that's really the heart of the decisions we have to make is what's the right decision for the city? What's best for the resident city? What falls in with the plans, the general plan and the things we have in place? And not be so concerned about whether or not that pencils out for them.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, we have to make the right decision and then that'll impact whatever decisions they have to make one way or the other, but.
Yeah, our job is to make sure it pencils for us, and their job is to make sure it pencils for them, so.
Okay, well, can we stop in the middle of this and come back to this? We need to come back to the automobile.
Doing that next, or hit the
The auto
automall next one?
Yeah, then we have Autoball after, we'll hit it, come back to that. I just wanna give us a chance to break for a minute, then get in there, I wanna start that general on time. I don't think we'll be long in our general meeting.
Just jinxed
You
it.
got
Oh,
some
just
excited
jinxed it.
Girl Scouts. They might-
I know.
they might
You
do
know
that.
better.
Gotta look for motion.
Did you guys get some
So
things wrapped up? Okay, good.
Motion to adjourn for the work meeting, going to
Motion
zero?
by Sherry.
Oh, yeah.
Second, all in favor?
Aye. Alright, fine. I'm not eating cookies, but, so that's what I said, I'm like,